Iran's state media came out and said today that it is not true what Donald Trump said. They have no interest and they're not willing to give up any of their uranium. And they also are announcing they're potentially reclosing the Strait.
Well, I'm getting whiplash just from reading the news, right? Because every hour the news changes. It's either, we're going to have peace tomorrow or they're going to send in ground troops tomorrow. So it's very confusing, and there's a lot of conflicting signals coming from the Trump White House. So for me, one big question I try to do is look at why this is happening, because before the ceasefire, it seemed as though that the Americans and the Iranians were committed to total war. Trump himself said that he wanted to bomb the Iranians back to the Stone Age. And then he gave the Iranians a few ultimatums. The last ultimatum was for Tuesday. And then when the deadline came, he said that, okay, we're going to surrender to the Iranians. We're going to agree to the Iranian 10-point plan, and we're going to have negotiations in Pakistan. And then when the negotiations happened in Pakistan, J.D. Vance went and said, basically, when you have to do whatever we tell you, or we will start bombing you again. So this is all very confusing. And so I want to propose a theory to you as to why this is happening. And you're going to know a lot more about this than I do, okay? But I think that why this war has turned a radical turn, why peace negotiations have started in the first place, is something happened 2 weekends ago that the news media is covering up, that Trump is desperately trying to cover up, which is 2 weekends ago. Remember, this was the successful pilot rescue, right?
Right.
This F-15 got shot down near Esfahan. And one pilot was rescued, but the other pilot, the weapons operator, he climbed to a mountain ridge, and then he was extracted successfully by a special forces operation. Okay, so that's what was reported to us by the Trump White House. But what people are suspecting is, because a lot of this story doesn't really make sense, what people suspect is that this was actually a failed uranium heist. A special forces operation was sent into Esfahan to try to extract the uranium from that facility. I don't know why they would do something like that, and I don't actually know the specifics, but it would explain a lot. For example, why was that two C-130s were destroyed? And then why is it that the pilots, we have absolutely no idea who they are, and why have not they talked to news media so far? Because if you go back to 2003, during Operation Iraqi Freedom, Jessica Lynch was captured by the Iraqis, and
True, that was a big cover up.
And that was a big news story, and she was paraded in America. So this is very strange, okay? But what the Iranians are saying, and this is being reported by the Chinese news media, and so I know this for the Chinese news media. What the Iranians are saying is they have 50 Delta Force operators as hostages. The operation failed. They captured 50 Delta Force operators, and now they're holding them as hostages. And if that were the case, this would explain a lot about Trump's behavior, where now he's desperate to make a deal as soon as possible. Because I think, like, if this were to come out, if the American people were to know that the Iranians have 50 hostages, this is a replay of 1979 Tehran hostage situation, where the students overran the U.S. embassy and held U.S. embassy staff as hostages. And remember that incident sunk the Carter presidency. That is what allowed Reagan to defeat Carter in 1980. So this represents a huge domestic political crisis for Trump. But that is one possible theory to explain why things are happening the way they are.